Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to Damn You Hollywood. The song is ironic. Our first show of 2017, I believe. Right, Mark? Our year-end review for 16 occurred late December, excuse me. So this is our first show of 2017.
You are correct, sir.
Personally, I would like to thank Mark for taking the months of January and February off for my own personal sanity, because if I had to review Underworld, number 27, Triple X, The Return of Xander Cage, or Resident Evil 56, the final chapter for realsy this time. We're not Terry Funk. No, you are. You really are. I might have lost it. I might have
Well, hang on. You just opened up a Pandora's box, baby doll. Because let me tell you one thing. Number one, I didn't take shit off. I'm the hardest working man in podcasts, okay? Name a day, name a week, including the week I went in the fucking hospital, that I didn't do a podcast. Name one. You can't, because I did them all. So I didn't take off shit. You took off. You didn't take off. You did the MMA show. So I don't know where you got this we took off thing from.
Okay, we took a break from this show for those 2 months.
There we go. The other thing I'd like to point out is you blew it. It's already over because we did not do the show for 2 months. We missed out on the number 2 movie in the world. There's billions of people in this world, just as there are billions of stars in the galaxy, baby. And we missed out on such cinematic masterpieces that have made oodles and oodles of money, like Triple X, The Return of Xander Cage, the number 2 movie in the world.
The fact that
we didn't do
The Return of Xander Cage could not topple 50 Shades Darker ought to tell you everything you need to know about how bad it was.
Women like the sex. That's what I've been told, at least. Number 5. The number 5 movie in the world is Resident Evil, the final chapter. Okay? Currently ahead of the Lego Batman movie, by the way.
Oh, why did you mention that? Oh.
I'm just saying, we missed out on some doozies here, and because I'm not really familiar with John Wick, I didn't want to do John Wick 2, currently the number 11 movie in the world. So I'm just saying, we missed out on some absolute cinematic masterpieces over the last 2 months.
I assume you misspoke when you said masterpieces. I'm going to assume that there was some other phrase you wish to use there.
I'm going to end this entire bit by saying Trainspotting 2 worldwide gross $30 million, but that's behind Monster Trucks, the film that Paramount took a write-off on before it ever came out at $62 million is too spots ahead worldwide of Train Spotting 2. Just saying.
Well, Train Spotting wasn't a massive commercial success in the original. It was a critical success and became a cult thing more so than, oh, look, it made $700 million worldwide. But speaking of making 700...
Hang on, I do have some good news, sort of.
All right.
Last thing, and then I will actually shut up and let you continue on with, hosting a show.
Then I will segue. Yes.
Underworld Blood Wars is the number 17 movie in the world, and it made $81 million worldwide on a $35 million budget. So, that one you can make an argument. Just saying.
I can make an argument for all of them because they were all terrible. The fact that they made money is a completely separate argument. Anyway,
the
speaking
fact that they
of
made
making
money is the only argument.
No. That is your only argument. It is not the only argument.
Money, 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 money. Everyone's got a problem.
And here I thought it was the Ultimate Warrior that used to live inside of you.
not since I turned 40, sir. Go on.
You transitioned into Ted DiBiase. Fair enough. All right.
That's right.
Tonight, we will be reviewing Logan. This was always going to be on our schedule, and when Mark and I kind of mutually decided that the movie show was just going to have to take a break for a couple of months due to various other commitments, financial obligations, issues of time, burnout. Look, life. Life is a thing, so I've been told. Not a good thing, but a thing.
Oh, boy.
Sorry, my nihilism is showing. I apologize.
Put that away, sir.
Anyway.
You're going to get us all killed.
Anyway, tonight we are reviewing Logan, and I'm very, very grateful this was our first movie back to review because I got to enjoy a movie and then talk about a movie I enjoyed, whereas the first 2 months would have been wall-to-wall misery. Just absolute misery on my part.
I would have been curious to see if I broke you of your, what's the word for sobriety. I would have been curious if by the end of February you had not picked up the bottle.
You could not pay me enough to drink alcohol.
Okay, just checking.
Well, hang on. Let me reconsider that for just a moment. Okay, specifically you could not afford the amount of money it would take for me to compromise my religious values and my personal morals to take even a sip of alcohol.
What if I had made you review 50 Shades Darker, the number one movie in the world?
Wouldn't do it. I'd rather review 50 Shades Darker than the Lego Batman movie. I'll tell you straight up.
Oh, you cut me. That hurts, sir. I actually did a mini review of the Lego movie on source material with Jesse Starcher in the archives on the show entitled Batman 66, which you can download on the Rattleton Broadcasting Network. Smooth as butter, baby.
I believe this is our first show as part of the WrestlingToTheMax.net network, W2M network.
Yeah,
so thanks to every one of you guys who have come to us through that particular avenue.
Yes, we are working with. We've been working with WT Max for a while now. We were just having our shows posted to their blog. We're now having them directly uploaded to their iTunes account or wherever they're hosting their podcast. So if you're not subscribed to the Rattleton Broadcasting Network, you're still getting access to our shows through the WTM iTunes account or wherever they're hosting their podcast. We're also syndicating a show from the FPG network, which is Stuart Lang, formerly of 411mania.com, and the current place where you can find some of Sean Comer's works. They've got a podcast on here called the Press Start Podcast, which is about video games, which is sorely lacking here on the Rattleton Broadcasting Network. But I am excited, too, that we are starting off Damn You Hollywood 2017 with Logan, as it is the very heart of Wolverine Week here on the Rattleton Broadcasting Network. Again, smooth as butter, baby. I am a plug machine.
Yeah. You know what? I don't have my wits about me enough to make a joke regarding plug machines and you, so we're just going to move on to the movie.
I'm quite frankly, with the way my health has been lately, I'm getting tired of people plugging things into me. My wrist looks like I've either been banging it into furniture or I've tried to cut myself recently. I'm getting tired of it. And then speaking of cut myself, have you seen my neck? No, you haven't, but because I didn't put it on Facebook. But doggy, I got quite the stitching across my neck now. I look like Frankenstein, sort of. Frankenstein's Munster. Anyway.
Nice. I approve.
Indeed. Moving on.
All right. Moving on to Logan, the final foray of Hugh Jackman as the role of Wolverine. He has announced he will not be reprising the role, with a potential. I believe he left open a minor caveat of if Fox and Marvel can ever get their crap together and give us a Wolverine within the greater Marvel Cinematic Universe, he'd be open to it.
I have a
However,
prediction. I think if Ryan Reynolds, and I'm going to be serious about this, I'm not going to make it like a gay joke or anything, but I think if Ryan Reynolds can sit down and create a situation that is interesting enough for Hugh Jackman to come back as a slightly younger Wolverine set in the time that Deadpool takes place in, I think he comes back with it. The two of them have been talking about a Deadpool Wolverine movie for a while now. I think,
and Hugh Jackman keeps shooting it down every time it's brought up. I think one of his public interviews recently, he said, "No, I've decided against it, and Ryan Reynolds can stay camped out on my front porch, but no."
I know. I saw the same interview, and I'm saying anyway, I don't think it's going to be Deadpool 2. I think it's going to end up being like X-Force or something, where they're going to somehow get Wolverine in there. Even if it's just a bit part, I think he shows up. I think there's going to be a Deadpool Wolverine situation at some point. But
I hope
let's
not.
stick with the task at hand.
I hate Deadpool so much. Anyway,
I know you do.
That's a different topic. For those of you who might have just had your jaws hit the floor, like, wait, this man hated Deadpool? Yes, and you can find if you want to hear me go into detail about that, Mark and I reviewed Deadpool. You can find that show in the archives here on the Radlich and Broadcasting Network. And you can listen to he and I argue the merits of blind characters, various forms of humor, and bad CGI.
This was a podcast so contentious, one of my friends called me up to say, that was uncomfortable to listen to, you yelling at your co-host for an hour.
Did you direct your friend to our Transformers review where I spent 2.5 hours yelling at you?
That was quite. We bring that up every now and then. That was quite a boisterous podcast, as it were.
I had fun. All right. Anyway, on to Logan. Again, Hugh Jackman's final turn as Wolverine. And finally, we get to see him actually act. They finally take Wolverine away from being the anti-hero leader of the X-Men, even though that's never a role he was specifically intended for. But because movie executives just see everyone loves Wolverine, well, he's going to be the star of all of our ensemble movies. Clearly you do not know what ensemble means, you jackass. With your MBA from the University of Phoenix and your uncle getting you a job at his production studio. And we get the two best actors in the totality of the X-Men franchise. There have been some very good actors that have appeared in that, again, throughout all of that. You have Sir Ian McKellen, tremendous actor. Famke Janssen's a very good actress. James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender, again, tremendous talents. Jennifer Lawrence. You have had some very talented actors and thespians in that show. I generally believe that the best, though, have always been Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman.
Don't forget will.i.am.
Who?
You know damn well who.
No, I honestly have no frame of reference for that.
You don't know who will.i.am is?
That is correct.
Okay, he was the black guy in Wolverine Origins. Or X-Men Origins Wolverine, rather.
Okay.
If I have to explain the joke, it isn't funny. Move on.
Jokes are only funny if you can explain them in minute detail. I don't know why people don't get that. So anyway, we finally get the closing of the Wolverine trilogy, which encompasses X-Men Origins Wolverine, which the less said about the better. The Wolverine.
You're going to hear a lot said about it this Thursday.
Look, there's two defensible things about that movie. The grand total of two.
Okay. Take it up with Sean. He's defending. I'm in the role of prosecutor this week.
I will happily... I think I have already talked with him briefly about what I believe are the only defensible parts of that movie. I mean, The Wolverine, which was a little bit bipolar, little hit and miss, but generally okay. And we're closing out with Logan, directed by James Mangold, who also directed The Wolverine and slightly better known for the... Why did his name just slip my mind? Johnny Cash biopic, Walk the Line. And, I mean, before we get into the particulars and I do my plot synopsis, Mark, I mean, we were always going to do this one. This was always going to be a relatively big movie. I don't know about you, but the first time I saw a trailer for this movie, I just about broke down. I don't know what it was specifically about it, but there's something about the combination of the Johnny Cash music, the clips they put together. It's one of the most perfect trailers I've seen, and I'm relatively sure I almost wept manly tears in the theater. So before I do my plot synopsis and then we get into it bit by bit, again, we were always going to do it, but what were your expectations for the film?
It looked amazing based on the trailers. I was really excited for the X-23 character. Based on the trailers, I had extremely high expectations. Let me preface this by saying I'm not especially if you've been listening to Damn You Hollywood for the breadth of this show that, you know, since we started it in whatever form it took. I'm not a gorehound. I'm not somebody that needs to see a lot of blood on the screen. I'm also not a Wolverine fan. I never read the comic. I had zero interest in this character, believe it or not. But I've enjoyed the X-Men movies for the most part. I don't think. I mean, I bashed on X3 as much as the next person, but I've since gone back and watched it. And I see good in that movie. I saw, I've enjoyed as I call it, the Mystique trilogy. I agree with you. Days of Future Past is probably one of my favorite X-Men movies. I really liked The Wolverine, despite the Silver Samurai. I have enjoyed Fox's X-Men series by and large. And when I saw the trailer for Logan, I thought, oh, this is going to be fantastic. The fact that it was going to be rated R, I know that allowed them more room to make the Wolverine character more deadly, more violent, more in tune with what he was for the most part in the comic book. But it's not something I needed to see. However, when I saw the trailers, despite that kind of being a caveat all its own, an element all its own, I was excited for this Wolverine at the end of his road type of movie. I was excited for the idea of family, of this road picture idea. I was excited, like I said, that they had the X-23 character as a young girl, and I thought, oh, there's going to be a lot of relationship type stuff between Wolverine and her. I saw, they had Professor X in it. Patrick Stewart, he's always great. And I was curious to see what they were going to do. He wasn't in the trailers much. He does more narration than anything else. Things like this is what life is about, Logan. There's still time. Things like that. So I was excited for all those things. And I'm going to put this out there, and then we'll come back to it when I do my part of the review. I wanted to like this movie more. I was actually somewhat let down. That's not to say that I didn't like it or that it's bad. And I'm going to put this out there right now, and then I'm going to come back to it. I am going to not make the same mistake on this podcast that I made with Civil War. I am not going to let my preferences dictate my objective review. Because I went a little off the rails with Civil War, and I've since had to retract a few things. Somewhat with Sean twisting my arm. But regardless, to be objective and maintain integrity, I need to separate what I would have preferred from what it was objectively. And so I'm not going to talk as much about what I would have preferred or what I personally didn't like. Just to say, I wish the movie. There were things about the movie that by the end of it, I was like, I wanted to like this more. I wish I felt differently than I feel right now. But that in no way means it's a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. And it's not. It's one of the better movies I've seen in a long time. But that has nothing to do with the fact that it's a comic book movie. It's just a well done movie. And it started with all of the promotion and the trailers and the songs. Everything set a tone for how great this was and potentially could have been.
All right. Now this is the part where I do a brief plot synopsis so that you can all understand. For those of you who haven't seen it, for those of you who have, just so that everyone's kind of on the same page here. This is also your chance to avoid spoilers. Again, I do my plot synopsis, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, be aware. I'm going to spell out the plot here, and then we're going to talk about it in detail, so here's your warning. There are spoilers ahead. All right. Logan finds the, again, titular character, Logan, as a limousine driver in El Paso. Many, many years have passed since kind of the heyday of the X-Men. We are set in 2029, I believe, is the year that gets thrown around. And he is hiding Professor Xavier, again, near the border. He's in Mexico when he is making what money he can, again, driving a limousine around bigger cities while trying to get money saved up for, I believe his goal is a sunboat, so that they no longer have to worry about necessarily being stalked on land, because Xavier's kind of a fugitive. In fact, it gets brought up later by one of the characters that they now classify the mind of Charles Xavier as a weapon of mass destruction. Logan himself is suffering from physical breakdown. He is not healing as fast. He is clearly aging. He is in chronic pain. This is very clearly not the same character from any of the other movies. The kind of berserk zombie who was just heedless of whatever you threw in his path. He was going to keep fighting, and he was going to find a way to win. And it didn't matter what you did to him. This is not at all that same character. He is very clearly affected by things physically, much more so than he was at any point previously. And he speculates, and it's essentially confirmed, that it is the adamantium that makes him indestructible that is slowly poisoning his system and overwhelming his ability to regenerate. While he is looking for fares or driving around, doing his job, he stumbles across a woman who knows who he is and attempts to pay him and entice him into assisting her and a little girl get to some obscure coordinates in North Dakota. I lived in North Dakota. There's a lot of obscure coordinates there. He initially turns them down. He has no interest. He's making money at a decent enough rate. He and Caliban are taking care of the professor, and he doesn't want any trouble. He's if I could steal a line from Detective Murtaugh, he is clearly too old for this shit. No doubt, made slightly more. That's exacerbated by the fact that he was born in the 1780s. For those of you who don't know how old Wolverine is. Eventually, though, they offer him enough money that he decides, okay, I will attempt to help them. Around that same time, we get our first look at... I forget the character's name. And there go my dogs. Donald Pierce.
Okay. I have the wiki up if you need other character names.
Donald Pierce. I just don't think they ever say his name, except like at the very end. I knew the actor was Boyd Holbrook. That's what I knew.
Okay.
And anyway, he says to Logan, I'm a big fan of you, even though mutants have essentially vanished from the face of the earth. There hasn't been a new one born in 25 years. I'm not interested in you. I'm content to let you, be and do your thing. But if this Mexican woman approaches you and she has a little girl with her, them I want to know about. And if you'll give me a call, I can make sure that you and the professor and everyone life remains the same for you. And Logan, in rather typical Logan fashion, tells him to F off. He winds up, again, deciding to take their money, trying to help, in large part because Xavier discusses it a little bit with him. Xavier, at this point, is suffering from some kind of neurological degenerative disorder. It's, again, never said explicitly whether it's, Alzheimer's, dementia, ALS, syphilis, something is clearly degenerating his brain. And considering he's the most powerful psychic mind in the world, that's a bit of a problem, as is brought up frequently by his seizures that are paralytic to everyone around him, to the point of lethality if he's not medicated, because he will actually physically stop you from breathing. The woman is found and murdered. The little girl hitches a ride with Wolverine back to their hideout. Bad guys show up. Violence ensues. Phrase I'm going to be using a lot when describing this movie, which is not a problem for me. Look, Mark is not a gorehound. I am at least 1/4 gorehound. I have no qualms about it. As long as it serves a greater narrative, bring it on. Again, bad guys show up. Violence ensues. The professor and the girl, Laura, who we come to know as X-23, and Logan all escape. They leave poor Caliban to be abducted by the Reavers. The Reavers are trying to locate and it also comes out that Laura was one of a whole generation of attempted mutant clones. Because with mutants no longer being produced naturally, there are people who are trying to create them artificially. So they're on the run from them. There's a fun scene in a casino in Oklahoma City where they just barely escape. They wind up stopping to help a family, featuring one of Mark's favorite scenes in this whole movie, I'm sure, because there are auto-driving trucks. And we all know Mark's all about the robot revolution.
Indeed.
So they decide to stop and help this family. We get one of the more heartfelt series in the movie as they all sit down to dinner and jokes and memories are exchanged with this family. Unfortunately, because things are going to go bad, while Wolverine is out doing some work with the father, his kind of repayment for room and board for the evening, the latest design in the Weapon X program, the X-24, a fully feral version of Wolverine, arrives at the house, kills the poor innocent family, kills Charles Xavier. Oh, and that broke my heart. Compounded, of course, a few minutes later when they have to actually bury him. Goes to reclaim X-23. Wolverine shows up. They fight. He kind of loses because, again, older, slower. Healing factor waning, and the other one is more idealized. He's a little bit crazier. Again, he's completely feral. Has a lighter dose of adamantium in his skeleton, but is much healthier, therefore. Caliban, who had been abducted by the Reavers, commits honorable suicide by blowing him and one of the Reavers up and injuring Donald with some grenades from their truck. The X-24 is incapacitated. Wolverine and X-23 escape. They have to bury Professor X, and again, that scene just broke my heart. Hugh Jackman does. Yeah, the man's acting does not get enough credit, and just watching him do that just absolutely tore me up. He passes out after venting his rage at his current situation on his truck with a shovel, which, while a somewhat humorous situation, I've never actually hit a truck with a shovel, but I have been brought to that point emotionally at various points. he recovers in an Instacare facility, another thing Mark's very big on. They eventually make their way to the coordinates that they need to get to in North Dakota. Wolverine progressively getting worse as he just accumulates horrible injuries and isn't healing from them nearly as rapidly or at all in some cases. Throughout most of this, he's expressing continual disbelief at this thing actually existing, this Eden that they're trying to get to. But they get there and find the other kids from the X-23 program, the X-23 generation of, again, Weapon X characters. And they're planning to sneak north into Canada because apparently there are Mounties at the border ready to repel the evil industrialists. I don't know who are going to be chasing them. That's my only pseudo gripe with this movie is, well, we're going to cross into Canada and it's going to be great. Like, really? I mean, you're clearly dealing with an independent organization, a corporation, not even a government organization, probably still reach you in Canada. Like there's still problems here.
Yeah, ain't you ever heard of NAFTA?
You're not helping. Anyway, they finally, as the children all prepare to depart, Logan is kind of ready to just let them be. He's still grappling with the emotions of having everything he's loved die around him. But then he sees that the corporation has actually located the children and are chasing them through the woods, and in his final hurrah, overdoses on steroids. It's a serum designed to increase his healing factor. It's only temporary. But he overdoses so he can be effective again. We get a big murder spree. Violence ensues. They wind up prevailing. The X-24 is killed by X-23, but not until after it has fatally wounded Logan, who dies finally a little bit at peace with X-23, who despite being essentially a clone of his, has constantly been referred to as his child. He finally dies there. They hold a funeral for him. They move off to Canada to start a new colony of mutants. I don't know the specifics. And just before they go, X-23, because they wind up burying him, and she changes the cross that is at the head of his grave into an X, which is a really nice touch, by the way. And then we, smash cut to credits, and life goes on.
So, two things. One, this I'm sure is going to be a soft prologue into the forthcoming New Mutants movie. If Richter, X-23, and whatever other group of X-Men they can cobble together to form the New Mutants out of those kids, that's going to be the premise of the New Mutants movie right there. Which I want to pitch this now. Might be a little old for the role, but I think she still got the look. Summer Glau as older X-23. Let's do it, people. Book it, Fox. Summer Glau. Get her in there.
If I'm Summer Glau, I stay away from Fox. They've done me wrong at least twice.
That was the second thing. That voice you hear laughing right now is our good friend of the program and of the Rattlegion Broadcasting Network in general, Mr. Andrew Graham. How you doing, Andrew?
Pretty good, guys. How are you doing?
And here I was hoping you were just going to call in with comments on the combat jiu-jitsu matches from EBI 11.
I didn't see all of it, I didn't see the combat jiu-jitsu matches. I did see a couple of the earlier ones, and there was at least one really nice Kimura from a mounted triangle that worked out really nicely. So I'll have to try that one out later, but I'll have to look up the combat jiu-jitsu stuff later. In any case, I heard you guys talking about Canada, so of course I had to call in.
Andrew is our resident Canadian, for those of you unaware.
Our north of the border correspondent.
And we are talking about, one of the more mentionable Canadian figures in greater popular culture. So I had to represent the Canadian content here.
That's right. We often forget that Logan the Wolverine was a member of Alpha Flight once upon a time. Rarely gets mentioned because he's mostly associated with the X-Men, obviously. But he had his humble beginnings in Alpha Flight, which, of course, was the Canadian version of the Avengers. A good old Puck and Sasquatch. All right, Andrew.
Sasquatch.
What's on your mind besides your hat, sir?
No hat today. I will apologize if I'm sounding a bit hoarse. I'm fighting a bit of a cold here. I just wanted to call in real quick just to kind of offer a couple of thoughts and then let you guys go on here. I managed to catch Logan on opening night, late night Friday. Just to give a quick preface, I am not overly familiar with X-Men comics. I have read a couple of volumes of Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men, a couple when I was a kid. Probably more familiar with the characters through the very good 90s cartoon, and obviously through the X-Men franchise that's been going on since 2000. In terms of the movie itself, I really did enjoy it. Mark, I did hear some of your preamble. I absolutely agree. This is not an easy movie to get through. It's not an easy movie to get through if you're an X-Men fan. I think it's generally a hard movie to get through in a lot of ways, but I think on some level the movie makes you work for it, and I think it pays it off emotionally in a lot of ways. I think I'll probably come back to that in a second, but I want to talk about performances first. And we've seen a lot of deconstructions in comic books over the last few years, and we've seen it within the genre itself. We've seen it done via movies, and this one does something unique, because what it's done is that it's taken two actors who have become, as closely associated with their characters as possible, and actually taken those characters to a genuinely low place, at times ugly place, at times just run down place. When you look at, the story and at the starting point and throughout the movie of where Logan is and where Professor Xavier is. I mean, starting there, it's just an incredibly brave, ballsy thing to do, both on the part of the overall filmmakers and on the part of both of the actors. And awards don't mean a whole lot, but if this movie came out in November, I'm sure people would be talking about it in some way or another, at least in wishful thinking points of view, because I actually thought the two lead performances were absolutely outstanding. And that all said, also, I got to give full credit to, I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, Daphne
Keane.
Daphne Keane.
Daphne Keane. She was amazing in this. Like, she was, she only really had dialogue for about half the movie, but when you talk about physical acting throughout the first half of the movie, like, she was carrying that with a couple of real veterans there who knew what they were doing. It is really remarkable on that side. As far as, kind of the overall movie and some of the things I alluded to, not an easy movie to get through. There is, both in terms of how relatively bleak it is, how violent it can be at times, and Mark, to some extent, I agree with you that I think there were a few too many scenes like that, not so much from a gore factor, from a point of let's save that up to the end of the movie and really pay it off there instead. And I think that, for me, worked in the movie's favor, because it took me on this journey. I'm speaking very less critically, probably just more emotionally, experientially here. It took you on this journey, and once you got to it, there's some stuff in this movie that, if done by a lesser film, and we've seen it done in lesser films, would come off as really trite and really hackneyed, but it all hits. And it all hits well because it's set up well and it's executed well and you buy into it well. Talking about the whole arc of Professor X, and at the end of the movie, the final scene between X-23, between Laura and Logan, just had me choked up. And Mark, I'm interested to see as a father how you felt for that one too, because I think it definitely, having a daughter myself, that definitely kind of hit me right there. And I think, the Shane eulogy at the end and turning over the axe, those are all things that I think we've seen other movies try and not quite hit, but they took the time to make the commitment to make sure that the audience was fully emotionally invested when they hit those points. And I think they just, in a lot of ways, knocked it absolutely out of the park.
Well, I would agree. I would absolutely agree with you. I want you to finish, but let me just answer your question there. Yeah, the best parts of the movie and the ones that affected me the most were the relationship parts. For an action comic book movie, it's actually the action comic book element that I liked least about it. I was more interested in these characters as people, and when she calls him daddy and she's crying and she turns the cross to an X, all of those things made me tear up. Certainly made me think about my own daughter, and I did like the fact that he doesn't go after her because she means something to him personally. He goes after her and really all the kids because it's the right thing to do. And at the end of the day, he's still an honorable man. You know, he's been put through the mill, especially as of late. And at this point, he's just kind of, it's Iago from the second Aladdin movie. He's looking out for me. And by me, I mean him and Professor X, who he owes a lot of his life to post the Weapon X fiasco. So this sort of refinding the hero within and saving the children, from evil, was what was driving him at the end. Not that I got the sense that any specific commitment to this girl. However, her sort of appreciation for him and finding an identity with him was very powerful. It was also one way.
I think so, and I mean, I think that's a point where I think the movie really does earn it. And I mean, I think probably the one thing that attracted me to this story, now that I'm thinking about it that more, is that how much of a redemption story it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for Logan, for Charles to some extent, to even to Laura, like they're all kind of on this redemption part of the journey. I mean, I don't know why for me that just seems to resonate with me. Like, I mean, one of my favorite shows of all time, Battlestar Galactica, that to me was one big series of redemption stories. And I mean, I know there's some controversy about the finale of that one, but I absolutely loved the finale. Speaking of finales, as far as I'm personally concerned, it's time to hit the reset button on the X-Men. Like, I think this wrapped it up really well, and on some level, like, I mean, Hollywood intern, if you're listening out there, that's how much of a fan I am. I know all the memes.
Everyone take a drink.
Roger that. Anyway, like, I mean, I'm kind of afraid of them trying to continue this on, because at some point they're going to resurrect Wolverine. Like, it's Fox. They just don't have the discipline not to do that necessarily. And I don't know if I want to see that, because on some level, I'm perfectly happy to say that this is the end and we move on to something else.
Well, rumor has it, rumor and innuendo, as they say on the Bruce Pritchard show, that the future of Wolverine is with X-23. And that what we're getting over the course of the next series of X-Men movies is a continuation of the characters and stories that started with the Mystique trilogy, that really ended with X-Men Apocalypse. That cast of characters is moving on to Supernova or whatever the fuck they're calling the next movie. But it's that timeline, it's that cast. Whether or not they're going to bring back What's-His-Face as Magneto remains to be seen. But McAvoy and company are all moving on to do another X-Men movie. We're getting Deadpool 2, which is supposed to have Cable, and I think Domino. I'm not sure about that, but whether or not Domino is in Deadpool 2, she will be in X-Force, which is also in pre-production. And lastly, as I mentioned before, we are definitely getting a New Mutants movie, and I would bet the Rattledge and Broadcasting Network and all of its worth, it's not worth much, that that her and Richter at a minimum will be in the New Mutants movie, which is in pre-production. Fox has a calendar of dates already laid out for next year and 2019 and I think 2020. Let's just say untitled Fox X-Men movie. So these are coming. This is what we're getting, folks.
Yeah, I mean, I caught X-Men Apocalypse finally a few weeks back, and I can't say I was crazy about it.
It's because it's not very good.
No, it's not. I mean, it's not X3 bad.
You people.
No, it's not
you
quite
people in your
X20
in your X3 hate. X-Men Apocalypse was fine. It was a fun action movie with comic book characters for the whole family. Well,
you want to hear the particulars of my problems with X-Men Apocalypse? It's also in the archives. Feel free to look it up. Mark and I have a fun debate about him saying, no, it was fun, and me saying, no, it was so stupid. Here's why. And him going, shut up with your thinking here.
Listen, I don't know much, but I know much. I don't know aught, but I know what I like, and I like schlock.
No, that's fair. If you want to look at it as schlock, I'm totally fine with that. So, I will say, I have one silly criticism of this movie, and go at me as you will with this one, and I have read the story on why this happened, and it's too bad I couldn't play it the other way. As much as I like when the man comes around, after seeing that trailer, I was really hoping the credit song was going to be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
I would have accepted Ain't No Grave either, just for a little bit of irony.
I'm pretty sure, guys, they didn't want to send the entire audience home suicidal. So I'm kind of happy they ended it with a man. You know, I know one of the trailer songs you hear there ain't no grave or something like not Ain't No Grave. It sounds like they're saying Down in the Hole.
Grace.
Okay, I'm hearing Down in the Hole somewhere in one of these Logan trailers, and I kept thinking, is this one of the versions of Down in the Hole from The Wire? Because that would have been awesome. If they had, I would have totally dug it Down in the Hole at the end of Logan. That would have been fine.
And I would like to point out right now that we have a Wire reference from Mark. Everyone take a drink.
There we go. You're playing along with the Rattledge Drink and Broadcasting Network drinking game.
Anyway,
all we got to do is make a wrestling reference, and then Pat has to call in and sing, and you'll have Rattledge and Broadcasting bingo.
Hey, we already made a wrestling reference. You brought up the $1 Million Man.
Oh, this is true.
Yep. I don't know. I think
we're one away from
bingo.
bingo.
A lot of selling during this movie.
Go ahead, Andrew.
I've got one last thought I want to share, and then I'll probably leave you guys to the rest of the review. And it's kind of talking about this movie's, of course, had a lot of press, and so did Deadpool, about the R rating. And about, it's another R-rated movie, and that we're getting so dark with the DCEU and stuff like that. And again, to the intern who's out there, this is a case of, to use another Rattledge Broadcasting phrase, I hope this doesn't turn into another case of more dinosaurs where we end up with every single movie taking the R-rated turn, because I don't think it's necessary for all properties and everything like that. Logan's a good movie because it's a good friggin' movie, not because it's rated R. You could probably take out the F-bombs and take out a lot of the gore, and it would still be just as good. And I mean, there's plenty of other examples. And there's plenty of examples where you've got, very colorful movies, very engaging movies, very happy movies, the original Superman. And just like, studio interns, studio executives out there, please don't just link Logan Good and R rating as being mutually exclusive. Please don't. Also, I would like to...
We're gonna make a Powerpuff Girls movie. It has to be R. The kids like R ratings.
J.K.
All right, Andrew.
Simmons really should have a the next chapter of his career, just parodying network executives as like an even more over the top J. Jonah Jameson.
That would be amazing.
R rating.
All right, Andrew. We are going to continue on with our review here. I'm going to give you my thoughts, but I appreciate your insight. Looking forward to discussing Roman Empire, Reign of Blood, next month on Rome Week, or as Pat keeps calling it for some reason, When in Rome Week, here on the Rattlevision Broadcasting Network. We will also get to The Crown at some point, but because of my cruise, may be working overnight that week, which means I'm going to have to put The Crown off. But we appreciate you calling in. You want to throw a quick plug out there and then take off?
Well, I think you pretty much covered off my plugs for right now for the next few podcasts that I'll be a part of. So.
All right. Thank you, bud.
All right. Thanks very much, guys. Take care.
All right. As for my thoughts on Logan, real quick, so we can get into this, I'm going to say first, I guess, the negative, and then I'll get into the positive. I felt the use of the word "fuck" was a bit. I think it was Stephen Klein, who did the very first HBO comedy special and was doing a bit about how, because this was subscription television in the 80s, so it was a very new thing, he could curse, and he just yells out "fuck" as just an example of how much freedom of language he has as a comedian on a televised broadcast. And years later, when they're interviewing him about it for, I guess, a documentary, he was like, I wish I had been more creative. And I couldn't help but think about that throughout this movie. I'm going to have to go back and make sure I have the name of the comedian right, but it just felt forced a lot of times. As somebody who curses quite frequently, I think cursing has its place in dramatic dialogue, but if it's overused, it becomes numbing, ineffective, and boring. And I feel like they overdid it in this movie. It was, again, to compare it to what I assume is Stephen Klein's point, it just felt like, oh my God, we have this freedom to curse. Let's make sure it's said a lot. Let's really take advantage of this instead of using it pointedly and effectively. With cable television, you have a little bit more leeway with cursing, but you can't go crazy. So on the occasion that I'm watching an FX show or something else, or not that I watch a whole lot on USA, but if I happen to be watching a cable TV drama of some sort, and they occasionally say shit, I'm actually surprised because they don't do it that often. Now, an HBO show is a whole other thing where, some of these shows are just well written enough that this isn't an issue. But yes, there's a lot of cursing in a lot of the shows. That's sort of that's what you get when you watch HBO now. It just felt forced on a lot of occasions. It didn't feel natural, and I thought, and there were times it really took me out of the movie. Now, take the word "fuck" and words "fucking" cursing out, and throw in stabby violence. Same point. Okay? It was like, once again, we have this wonderfully large canvas, the R rating, to work with. And we've somehow neglected to make Wolverine not murdery enough. So let's make sure we do that one last time. I was perfectly fine with his representation in X2. He was perfectly murdery in X2. I didn't need to see heads coming off and and the knives going up through people's chins. Like one scene where he's doing that, I can deal with. By the third go around of the same violence. Now, I want to be clear about this. This isn't a matter of graphicness. I'm not that much of a baby. So this isn't like I was grossed out or anything. It was three long sequences, if I'm doing my math correctly, of stabby violence. There's no build-up. There's no change. There's nothing. He does the same thing to the Mexicans at the beginning of the movie that he does later on to the Ravagers, to the Reavers, when they attack them at the compound. They go through and then there are 4 sequences like this. Then there's the very end of the movie on the hill in the woods where it's the same thing. There's one sequence where there's at least a little bit of a change, and it's during the psychic attack in the casino,
when he does it in slow motion.
Where he does it in slow motion, but at least that artistically was interesting. That was one of my favorite violent scenes of the movie because it was different than everything else, and I saw them kind of having fun. Again, film is a visual medium. Take a drink. That was very visual. It was a good use of effects and camera work, and individually what the characters can do and how you can play with them. So that I liked. But, from the start to finish, I was like, all right, it's yet again more of him stabbing people with knives. I know people like kung fu movies. I know people like to watch fighting on screen. I am one of these people who, while I'm watching Arrow and there's these long series of fight scenes where it's basically Arrow versus evil Arrow in a lot of cases, it's just everyone's a ninja, I get up and go to the bathroom or go get a sandwich. Everyone made such a big deal out of Batman v Superman when you get to see Batman in the warehouse. It was like, I've seen this already. I get it. Watching people fight is dope. Ugh. But at least with Batman v Superman, it was that one scene. It was contained to one scene. And then they did something different in the next action sequence with, what's the name of the alien that
Doomsday.
God turns into? Thank you, Doomsday.
Should not have been in the movie.
No, he shouldn't have been. That's why they hear know that. I always call him Deathstroke, by the way, which tells you how much Arrow I've been watching lately. But my point is...
You need better choices for your television entertainment.
Okay, it's a whole other conversation. My point is, between the cursing and the excessive violence, it was an embracing of the R rating to, I think, the detriment of the movie. And I'm willing for people to tell me I'm wrong about that, because I think that there's an argument to be made that that's personal preference, but I'm telling you it's a craft issue. It got redundant, and it took me out of the movie multiple times.
There are degrees to which you're right that it's kind of a craft issue, and there are degrees to which it's your personal preference.
That's fair.
You're not completely wrong.
But I want to quickly add to all of this, it's a good movie. Andrew is absolutely right. Robert is absolutely right. The performances are the star of this movie, in my opinion. There's not a weak performance in it, including the kids. Normally, Robert and I will make fun of the fact that if you put a kid in the movie, be prepared for it to suck. But all the kids did fine. Daphne Keane holds her own with everybody else in this movie. She really did an excellent job. The casting agent who found her gets a raise, in my opinion.
Apparently, part of the reason she got the job was when she was doing some screen testing with Hugh Jackman. I don't know the specifics of the scene, but it calls for her to punch him, and she kept punching him in the arm, and she kept bruising him every time she did it. I thoroughly enjoyed when she finally starts yelling at him in Spanish. It's like my favorite part of the movie. I got such a kick out of it. Wait, you can talk? What's been within the last, week about? What have you been doing? And then she goes off in Spanish, and you can kind of see Hugh Jackman in a very understated way go, oh, that's why.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Patrick Stewart is a tour de force as Professor X, as this fallen from grace teacher who murdered, and I need to talk about this, who murdered his students and 600 other people, and is sort of struggling with his fall from grace, with his lack of power. He's still trying to be a redemptive figure for Logan. All of that, brilliant. And obviously Hugh Jackman is amazing in this role, as the man who must be redeemed, the man with no name, as it were. As a Western motif, I thought this worked very well. The other characters in the movie all, held up their parts of it. It looks nice. I know they were going for dystopian, which they did by putting it in the West, but it's obviously the world has not fallen off the edge like in Mad Max. Their world has fallen off the edge, which I thought was a nice contrast. Really quick talk about two things, and then I'll let Robert come back in. As I said, it's mostly a great movie. I think personally, it's not my favorite. It's not even my favorite of the X-Men movies. I would tell you my top 4 are Days of Future Past, no particular order. Days of Future Past, Deadpool, X2, and X-Men Apocalypse.
Deadpool should not qualify.
I really liked X-Men Apocalypse. I have no idea what everyone's problem is. But
we expected it to not be a glorious display of bright things go boom for 2 hours.
I like bright things that go boom. But this is not about X-Men.
I'm well aware of that. I'm explaining why other people didn't like it. It was devoid of emotion. It was devoid of acceptable, interesting narrative. And quite frankly, most of the action sequences were repetitive, which is a complaint I share generally about Logan, by the way.
And you can hear us debate this movie ad nauseum in an earlier podcast. In any case, my one other complaint about this movie, and this again could be preference, could be craft. I haven't quite decided, and I read about this, so that's why I want to talk about it. Deciding to not include a flashback to what in the hell Xavier did that caused them to have to go on the run, I didn't like, personally. And one of the reasons why I didn't like it was you never get away from the central story. It's a 2-hour movie, it's a 2-hour road trip movie, and there's never a cut to anything else happening in this world or anything that gives you any indicators as to the world they're living in. You get a little bit of an explanation as to what the villain who shows up at the end of the movie, Stephen Merchant, who plays.
Stephen Merchant plays Caliban.
Richard Grant, who plays Xander Rice. You get a little bit of the explanation, which I've had to go now. I've had to read several articles to get all the details because I missed all of this in the movie. So that's what I'm saying. I'm willing to take a little bit of responsibility on myself. Maybe I just missed stuff. But he talks about how he wiped out a lot of the mutants with the virus that was put in corn syrup. And there's a discussion about, how Patrick Stewart, Charles Xavier, had a seizure and the psychic attack that killed the X-Men and a bunch of other people. Again, film, visual medium, these are things I would have liked to have seen. I didn't need to see it at the beginning of the movie, which Mangold did an interview that said basically we were thinking about starting the movie with that, but then the movie's about that, and that's not what the movie was supposed to be about. Okay, so put it later in the movie. Instead of just cutting to him waking up and going, I remember what I did, why not cut to that incident, then have him wake up from a nightmare where he remembers it, then say, tonight was the most wonderful night and I don't deserve it because I've done a terrible thing, and then have the clone kill him. I think it still works with the flashback. And it's something I think the movie sorely needed, was something else to take you a little bit away from the main story, a little bit of a side road. The other thing is I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of how the world got the way that it was. Good, bad, or different.
It didn't get there's no cataclysmic event that gets the world to where it is. They started inserting their cure for mutation into the world at large, and mutants stop being born. That's really all it is.
Right, but Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. did it in a good way. They had the Transigen, or whatever the fuck it's called, go into the water. Yeah, whatever. They had the thing go into the water. It got into the fish. The fish got caught and got turned into pills. It was like a minute and a half sequence. But it explained everything that you needed to know about how suddenly Inhumans were going to start popping up all over the Earth. That's all I'm asking for here. Just a sequence.
I don't think it was necessary in this instance. I kind of agree with you on the flashback. That could have maybe been worked in, or at least a greater... Even if you don't want a discussion, or a flashback, you could have had a discussion between Logan and someone else about it. You could have easily worked that in. As far as the mutants going away, I don't need a sequence. I honestly didn't even need it as a subplot.
Yeah, I did.
The world as it stands simply has no mutants. I'm perfectly okay accepting that.
I had a problem with it, and that may be that may be personal preference. It's just, for me, you've set up this world that is a direct influence on these characters and the decisions that they're making. Please tell me a little bit more about this world and how it got to be what it got, but do it with pictures. It's a movie, not radio. But other than those quibbles and complaints and suggestions, like I said, overall, I emotionally, it's great. It definitely makes you feel. And I definitely got weepy at the end, especially when she turns the crossover into the X. Probably one of my other favorite parts of the movie, to be quite honest. I think I'm not going to say the movie is too dark. That's not the issue. I think at the end of it, I was like, I kind of had a Mad Max moment where at the end of it, I was kind of like, what the fuck did I just watch? And it wasn't as bad as Mad Max. I'm not getting into that argument again. It was more of...
You're really better off not getting into that argument with me. I've discussed that movie with other people. I've rewatched it several times, and that's not an argument you're going to win.
It's not a matter of winning and losing, sir. It's a matter of opinion.
No, you made empirical statements pertaining to the quality of that film.
In any case, yes, Wolverine has an arc. He is redeemed by the end. I don't know if that's enough to hold up an entire movie. I think that was where I finally landed with this. I was like, that's it. That's what we got here. It doesn't... For people who wanted murdery Wolverine, bloody, gory, knifey, stabby Wolverine, screaming bloody murder, for you folks, this movie goes out with a bang. I needed something more. That wasn't necessary for me. I didn't find myself really needing it or wanting it. And to say goodbye to this character, it wasn't really... I needed something more for me. If he had died at the end of Days of Future Past, that would have been sufficient. That told an excellent story where I felt like, he sacrifices at the end for the greater good. And if he doesn't come back from it, I'm okay with it. I'm okay saying goodbye to the character. At the end of this, I was like, all right, on to the next thing. Jesus. On to Kong, Skull Island. Here we go. So those are my thoughts and criticisms, sir.
Again, there's a few that I disagree with. There's a few that I do agree with. I kind of agree with you about the action and in some cases kind of the violence being a tad repetitive. On the one hand, I understand they wanted to ground this movie as much in reality as possible, more so than any of the other entries into the franchise. Consequently, you don't get a whole lot of diversity of action sequences. because Wolverine has a very specific fighting style. Consequently, he's not going to change unless he is forced to by external sources, and even then, frequently it's too late.
I think if you're gonna do a repetition of violence, then you almost have to go the video game route where you have to change the villains or the things you're fighting. I think instead of doing the X-24 clone, a more effective villain at the end of the movie for him to fight would have been either the actual or a clone of Sabretooth, and they should have brought back Liev Schreiber, who was considered for this movie, by the way.
Oh, I don't think I could have handled that because I loved Liev Schreiber in X-Men in Origins so much.
And I think, had they done that, had they just brought him in at the end, and they, or rather they introduced, they basically take out X-24 and say, we gave up on the kids project because we came up with something better, and we got this, and and have a, I thought you were dead, like, no, it's better, it's a clone, and it's a clone of Sabretooth. The other one I would have accepted would have been Omega Red, but that would have been probably very complicated.
That would have been extremely complicated and utterly unnecessary and a complete waste of a potentially valuable character.
Right. I'm just saying, as far as build up to a climax that makes sense and is interesting and is visually stimulating. Watching Hugh Jackman fight himself twice, I was getting bored. So I guess the best option would have been a clone of Sabretooth at the very end.
My only issue is that you would have to restructure so much of that finale around it instead of simply reintroducing a character that we saw, heal himself and that we know to be more than to be the better of the original Logan. So I don't hate it. There's a lot that has to be restructured if that's the route we're going. But again, as far as I am a fan of violence. I make no bones about it. I make no apologies for it. And so a lot of this I was very happy to watch. The only thing missing from the opening sequence where he tears through those that game of Cholo Juggalos was for Juggaloker to be there because.
Stop.
No, seriously. Kill the Joker already. You guys can't do him right. Stupid Suicide Squad, terrible movie.
All right. Anything else, sir, before we move on to the next segment here?
Now, just to echo a lot of what you said, Hugh Jackman gives a tremendous performance that rewards you for actually paying attention to him. It's not all through dialogue, and it's not all, I don't want to say, it's not all overt. He's not overacting, which is something of a rarity for that character in the Wolverine franchise, because normally he's been written to overact one way or the other. In this case, to see him be subtle about it, to see him, just use his eyes and his face and emote that way was really, really tremendous. Patrick Stewart does a phenomenal job.
Yeah, his death sequence broke my heart. I mean, I think if I had one real, and not because he dies, more of that, I now realize what I've done. That's what broke my heart was because I mean, what is Xavier but the teacher, the mentor, the father to all to. The Pope, the father to all the children, and he killed them. He murdered them. Whether he intended to or not is sort of besides the point. And this is a man who doesn't have a murdering soul, like Logan. This is not a man who has thrown himself into death. He's about life, and he's committed this atrocity, and the guilt that he's racked with. That's what broke my heart. And that's what Patrick Stewart does so well in that scene. And then he's unceremoniously fucking murdered.
All of it. Yeah, and then his
I would
the
have liked a little
actual
bit more
death
of a
scene
beat
in
there.
the bed of the truck kind of got to me. I got a kick out of his line. One of the first times you see him, and he is clearly diminished.
Mm-hmm.
And after they get him back into his bed, he mentions Logan by name. Oh, so you do recognize me. So you do know who I am. And his response is perfect from, if you've never been around someone suffering from some kind of, again, dementia or Alzheimer's or, something that is screwing with your brain. His response of, I always know who you are. I just don't always recognize you.
The other line about, you just want to see me, something like, you just want to see me confined to a chair and helpless. You're
just waiting for me to die.
Yeah. That just had that palpable anger and frustration. This was a powerful man, and he's been reduced to this, and he hates it, and he resents Logan on some level. It's all very good stuff.
Now, the dynamic between those two is superb. It is the best thing about this movie.
Yeah.
Followed very closely by, Logan and X-23.
Yes. All right, are we ready?
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else about the movie in particular.
All right, folks, if you are new to Damn You Hollywood, here come the money.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar.
A little late there. All right. Here's a section of the review where we look at the money, the business of the movie. Logan had a $97 million budget, and if you don't know, now you do. The object here is to double the budget and make more than that. This doesn't take into account marketing, which is probably triple the budget, but this is production budget. So for Logan, in order to be minimally profitable, it had to make more than $180 million. It's currently sitting at $254.6 million, making it domestically, it's the fourth most successful movie of the year after one weekend, behind the Lego Batman movie, Split, and 50 Shades Darker. I'm sure over the next week that it's very close to the 1, 2, and 3 here. The Lego Batman movie's only got it by about $50 million. It'll be the number one movie by Monday. It'll be the number one movie in America. Worldwide, it's currently sitting at number 7, behind the Lego Movie and Resident Evil. The number one movie, as we said before, is 50 Shades Darker. Number 2, baby, Triple X, The Return of Xander Cage.
Donnie Yen has a legion of fans in his native country who supported this. It
needs to make another $100 million total to pass, $102 million really, to pass 50 Shades Darker. I'm sure it will. We predicted it's probably going to be one of the most successful movies of this year. We were talking earlier. I think I initially said watch it make $1 billion, just because the character is so popular and everyone's so happy with how this movie did. I think it has like a 98 or 96 or some shit % fresh rating, certified fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. So critically it's a hit, financially it's a hit. It's Fox is probably pleased as punch. But they're not quite carrying Hugh Jackman around like they did Ryan Reynolds with Deadpool, but they're happy.
Well, they also had to do that because that was their only hit of that year.
Yeah, it didn't do. Fox did not have a good 2016. That being said, I think I'm going to have to lower my predictions for Logan because in 2 weeks, Beauty and the Beast is coming out from Disney, and that's probably going to be our first billion-dollar movie of the year. That thing looks like an unstoppable juggernaut. In terms of other money issues here, they did as far as like in comparison to other X-Men movies, the budget here is minuscule. I mean,
well, they did a really good job of keeping it low in a couple of different ways. One, they have a much smaller cast than the average X-Men movie.
right.
They also have fewer known actors, which means you have to pay them less. You also need exponentially, if not not quite infinitely, because there is some CGI in this movie. You need exponentially less CGI for this movie than you do for any of the other X-Men movies. The others are stuffed to the gills with it, to varying degrees of good to bad CGI. This one has very little CGI in it.
So the first X-Men movie in 2000 had a $75 million budget, and it landed just under $300 million worldwide. Looking at the last one, Apocalypse, just as a comparison, had a $178 million budget. And yeah, it was profitable, but not much. It's finally ended its run at $543 million, which is a letdown. With the size of the cast.
There was some pretty hefty expectation. You were coming off of Days of Future Past, which was the best of the X-Men movies. And bear in mind, anyone who says otherwise is speaking purely from personal preference, not from a point of craft. Which is fine and dandy. Just don't argue with me its quality if you don't like it. And you had that one, and you had all the expectations, and then you made a mediocre piece of, stuff. Things happened, and no one cared.
It was a $200 million budget on that one. That one made almost $1 billion. That settled in at $747 million. One of the more successful of the X-Men movies when you compare budgets to
Who'd have thought? You make a good movie,
profit. People
will see it.
But probably the most financially successful of all of these was Deadpool, where it had a production budget of $58 million and made $783 million worldwide.
Yep.
Looking at the rankings, adjusted for inflation, the number one most successful movie was Deadpool, followed by X-Men: The Last Stand, and then X-Men 2 United. Wolverine, Apocalypse, and First Class are down at the bottom. I'm not counting Logan yet; it just fucking started. So, just to kind of give you an idea of where the X-Men movies stand and where Logan stands against them. I think by the end of its run, it's going to be probably close to Deadpool and X-Men: The Last Stand, if not the most successful financially. So this is the end of the run, though, for Wolverine, or Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, unless they plug him into an X-Force movie somewhere. I really don't have much to add. As far as
I have only one thing I want to bring up that Andrew kind of touched on.
Mm-hmm.
Dear studio executive with your bad ponytail, because I'm sure you've got one. Please don't look at this as Deadpool, $700 million, Logan, $600 million, whatever it winds up at. Clearly, we must make these things R-rated. No. You people, by which I mean morons in suits, whose whole purpose in your whole job is to meet with 3 different writers or directors or production staffs a day and give them notes. You don't actually do anything. You are a useless pustule. You're a skin flap. You did all of comic book films a huge disservice for 30 years by thinking they all had to be brightly colored, golden age, family-friendly affair when there were characters and stories that needed to be darker, frankly, in some cases R-rated. Look, Ghost Rider should never be a PG-13 movie. Just straight up. Should also never be Nicolas Cage, but that's a different discussion. By the same token, don't look at success of, oh, look, R-rated. That's what everyone wants. No. Deadpool works as an R-rated movie because that's all Deadpool is. If you take away the ability to use obscenity, Deadpool is nothing. One of my big issues with the movie. No, seriously. You put him on primetime network television. What does he do?
Nothing.
Thank you.
Talks to the screen.
Nothing. Because he's a nothing character, but I digress. You need to take these things one at a time. There are story arcs for characters that are normally brightly colored and kid-friendly that are darker. There are also a few arcs for darker characters that can be made more broadly accessible. This is not, you cannot paint these things with broad swatches. You have to have a bit of discernment, a bit of intelligence, and a little bit of restraint. Unfortunately, those are all things that are sorely lacking in your entire industry. So I'm spelling it out for you very clearly.
All right, actually, real quick, I forgot we do this as well. So the weekend rankings, obviously Logan was the number one movie of the weekend with an $88 million domestic gross. It knocked Get Out of the first spot, which apparently is a very good horror film put out by Universal, by one of the guys from Key and Peele. That dropped about 15.4%, and it turned in a $28 million weekend. So that got knocked down from 1 to 2. The Shack debuted at number 3. The Lego Batman movie dropped from 2 to 4. John Wick 3 to 5.
Stupid Lego movies. They're stupid.
And before I
thank you people for seeing them and perpetuating them.
No, they're amazing. They should make more of them.
Neither of those statements are true.
And Before I Fall debuted at number 6. Rounding out the top 10, we've got Hidden Figures, which maintained its position for 2 weeks in a row, at least. At number 7, The Great Wall with Matt Damon. Dropped from
Matt
number 4 to
Damon.
number 8.
He's on the movie about the wall. He's with the bow. He's tiny.
Matt Damon.
Sorry, we have a lot of fun at the expense of Matt Damon on this show.
50 Shades Darker dropped from number 5 to number 9. And finally, the Oscar Run Wild La La Land, which I have not seen because who gives a shit, dropped from
well,
with
you
one of the
don't.
chicks
You don't care about quality. You care about explosions.
I'm sorry, to quote the chick who said it on Movie Fights recently, it's about white people dancing around California. Hooray. La La Land from number 8 to number 10. So, by the way, by comparison, the Best Picture nominee, Moonlight, went from 18 to 13. Oh, hot damn. Good for you, Moonlight.
Well, it didn't have a wide release. It finally won an Oscar, and people started thinking, maybe I should see that.
Hey, Rogue One dropped from 23 to 27. Which, weirdly enough, Sing, still in the movies, maintained its position at 21. And Moana dropped from 15 to 18, which, by the way, is this week's Honest trailer, for those of you that are into that sort of thing.
I figured the Honest trailer guys are batting about 250.
Holy shit, Monster Trucks went up 10 points. Monster Trucks went from number 38 last week to 28 this week. Who the fuck went out and saw Monster Trucks this weekend? What the hell, man?
I imagine a bunch of stoned people at a dollar theater. That's about all I can think of.
My almost 3-year-old son loves Monster Trucks and didn't even want to go see that movie. Jesus Christ. All right, let's move on here. Sir?
Okay. For those of you joining us for the first time, we have 3 distinct segments on this show. The first one where we talk about the film and its craft. It's your typical movie review. Then, because Mark and I are both actually interested in the reality and finances of movie making, we talk about the money, as we just did. I have no complaints about this movie. Kept the budget appropriate. Going to clean up financially as far as profitability goes. And then there's the third segment. You see, what differentiates us from your average movie review show is, in addition to talking about money, which most critics do not, they focus purely on craft, we also look at critical analysis. So this brings about the point in the show where Mark finds reviews on Rotten Tomatoes that are bad, and I yell at them for being bad. Because I don't understand how those people are actually paid to do what they do when they're that bad at it. So, as our transition, it's time for us to review the critics, and here is my reaction to them, as always.
Oh my
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Camilla Long of the Sunday Times UK, the super violent Logan is just slashed brisket. 2 out of 5 stars.
First of all, I'm not sure you understand what brisket is. You just Googled cuts of meat. Second of all, no, the best parts of this movie are actually the non-violent ones, where you just get to see people interact. And don't get me wrong, I love violence. I've already said that. And I love the violent parts of this movie. Again, tad repetitive by the end in terms of visual presentation, but I was still cheering on Hugh Jackman as he charged through the woods, laying waste to Reavers. I'm down for that.
Well, I'm glad you're. I'm glad you're down for that, because according to Damian Straker of Impulse Gamer, Logan makes sadism fun.
I think you might have crossed your reviews. You might have tried to send that for 50 Shades Darker. I mean, that's the only thing I can come up with. No, this doesn't make sadism fun. Do you people not understand how sadism works? Sadism is not inflicting violence or injury. Sadism is enjoying the process. Logan very clearly and very explicitly does not. In fact, there's a very clear undertone to so much of his character in this movie that he really wishes he could do something else. But this is all he can do. And well before Chris Jericho stole the line, he was the best in the world at doing it.
Well, as we said on the Wolverine Week podcast, he's the best at what he does, and what he does is get her done.
Mark, I'm going to put you on timeout for that.
I have better ideas. We also
You couldn't have gotten much worse than Larry the Cable Guy.
We decided that they should cast Hugh Jackman as the Wolverine, as the Beast in Beauty and the Beast, and then have Gaston played by The Rock.
Well, I support The Rock playing Gaston. That should have been the way it was. Just straight up.
Excuse me. All right. Mara Reinstein of US Weekly. Top critic, baby. She gets paid for this shit. Just because a comic book flick takes the dirt road less traveled doesn't mean it's a cinematic work of art.
Well, duh. In other news, water is wet. There's no inherent value to a different visual presentation any more than there is to adhering to current standards. I've yelled at Mark about this before because Mark is married to conventional storytelling. He loves it. I maintain there is no inherent value in sticking with conventional storytelling than there is in breaking it. It's all about how you do it. This is kind of the crux of our...
Except that it makes money and it's safe, and when you've got millions and billions
of dollars
on the line...
How much money did Ghostbusters make again?
Not enough.
Yeah, because it
should have made more money.
And it adhered to traditional storytelling. Now let's contrast that with the original Ghostbusters.
Because people like you hate women.
I don't even. If we've got new people here, they might think you're serious.
I'm sorry. I thought that was the accepted narrative. I just don't want to make anyone upset.
Look, the point is, Mark is kind of married to conventional narrative structure, and I don't think there's any value in conventional narrative structure any more than there is in breaking it. It's all about how you do it and whether or not it's successful. If you need an example, the new Ghostbusters movie adhered quite rigidly to conventional narrative structure. It sucked out loud. The original Ghostbusters does not adhere to conventional narrative structure. In fact, breaks it in a couple of places to varying degrees of success and is much more successful, much more appreciated, and a much better movie. Now, that doesn't mean you can. That doesn't mean you can break the conventional structure just to break it. You have to do it correctly. You have to do it within an accepted pattern. In this particular instance, we got a much more grounded, much more focused, much more realistic depiction of a comic book character in a superhero movie, for want of a better phrase, that ignored the convention set down by Marvel in the cinematic universe, even the DC expanded universe, for as fraught with problems as
By
that
the way,
is.
Marvel, the kings of conventional storytelling, and they have even within Disney one of the most profitable movie franchises of all time. Thank you very much.
I didn't say. Look, my point was, adhering to conventional narrative structure has no inherent value if you make a bad movie. Marvel has managed to avoid making a bad movie to date under the generally accepted parameters as such.
Right.
So they rigidly adhere to it, and it darn near bit them in the ass as far as Doctor Strange goes. If they keep doing it, it's going to bite them again and harder. In the instance of Logan,
I wouldn't say it bit him in the ass with Doctor Strange. I would say it bit him in the ass with Avengers: Age of Ultron, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, it did, but my point with Doctor Strange was, how many people did you and I yell at for saying, well, it's just Iron Man? I mean, A, it wasn't, but B, they didn't do a whole lot to... I can completely understand why people got confused. I mean, let me just put it that way.
We need to move this along.
Anyway, my point here, my point, Logan breaks with those conventions deliberately to tell a very different story, and it is exceptional. It doesn't, again, just because it broke it doesn't, it's not good because it broke it. It's good regardless. And maybe it couldn't even exist within, again, the more conventional tones that most people consider when they consider an X-Men movie or a comic book movie. But it broke them deliberately to tell a very specific story, and it succeeds and excels. If you're hung up on, I like my superheroes brightly colored, full of cheesy quotes and happy endings and rainbows, this is just not the movie for you fundamentally, any more than No Country for Old Men is.
Will Leitch of the New Republic, top critic. After a while, with all that relentless drudgery and all the maimings, it becomes a bit much. Wait, don't even react to that because I got a better one. This I want to hear. This I am waiting for the full Winfrey. Sean Burns of Spliced Personality. The morose nihilism and all-around joylessness come to stink of adolescent posturing. This comic book movie for adults feels like one of the genre's most juvenile entries. Get him, Winfrey.
Oh, wow. You must just feel so good. I mean, I have to imagine that prior to seeing this movie, he encountered a couple of whiny edgelords and just went into it with that massive preconception about, no, I'm just not in a good place, and boy, everything that looks less than optimistic must reek of, adolescent angst. This movie isn't nihilistic. I'm nihilistic. This is not, which is somewhat odd considering I'm also LDS. Odd juxtaposition. This is not a hopeless or a nihilistic movie. If you want to argue fatalism, I will accept your argument. Those are not at all the same thing. Fatalism deals with the acceptance and inevitability of your own mortality. This is far from a hopeless movie. The whole point of the movie is the sacrifice of Xavier and Logan to ensure hope for the future. But I guess you were just too busy whining about, your FAP hand being injured to actually consider the implications beyond, boy, this sure feels dour. I can't possibly be expected to look beyond the surface of something. I'm only a critic.
I'm going to read a few in a row here because these are all kind of hilarious. Now, normally when I do this, it's because they're all saying the same thing. But these are so mindlessly stupid, they might as well be all saying the same thing. Gary Thompson of the Philadelphia Daily News. Logan is not really asking us to consider plight of vulnerable children. It's encouraging us to get off on it.
What? You are...
Matt Prigg of... No, I want to read a few more. Matt Prigg of Metro. At the end of the day, it's still just a comic book movie, bragging about how it's no typical comic book movie. Yes, and... oh, gosh. Stephen Day Gradanis of the National Catholic Register. Whenever the filmmakers have a choice between cruelly slaughtering characters and letting them live, they almost always choose the cruel path. And my favorite one so far, more because you would happen to mention No Country for Old Men, it's Stan Lee. This is Matt Brunson of Creative Loafing, that wonderful paper. It's Stan Lee by way of Cormac McCarthy. But the end result, basically, No Country for Old X-Men suffers from its own sense of self-importance. All right, you're on.
You see, this is why we do this segment, ladies and gentlemen, because there are these boneheads out there. These people drawing a paycheck for this. These people who apparently are incapable of finding their own ass with both hands and a flashlight. No, how dare a movie take inspiration from something else? How dare, for the love of, it's not, I don't even necessarily find No Country for Old Men to be the most accurate comparison if we're just dealing with structure of Westerns. There's a much more compelling argument to be made for the John Wayne film The Cowboys, which forever ruined that one guy's career. His name I can't remember at the moment. But now he basically dies in every movie he's in because he killed John Wayne. And you never recover from that. There's a certain segment of the population that will never forgive you in any role you ever take for the rest of your life after you've done that. And I'm borderline one of them. So no, that's stupid. If your point is, all comic book movies must be, this is the TV dinner approach to cinema. You must be within your own compartment, and you must not move over into the next. No, it's stupid. That's a pointless argument. It's fundamentally flawed. It's without basis in logic, much less artistic interpretation. The one that says, you're supposed to get off on the child no! They actually do an exceptional job of limiting what the audience sees as far as the terrible things that were done to these children. We see Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart react to it. They're in peril, sure, but we are not encouraged to enjoy it. It is peril. We are supposed to root for them to overcome it. That's the whole point, is the overcoming. What is the matter with you? How many times were you dropped on your head as a child, and were at least two of them thrown by your parents who were just sick of you? Well, seriously.
All right, last one. This is a top critic. I always like to end with the top critics. People who are, they get paid for this. This one is from Time Magazine. Stephanie Zacharik. The grim side of human nature is all over James Mangold's Logan. But that doesn't necessarily make it a good movie.
Well, no more than showing the bright side does. That's the whole point of what we've been discussing here. It is not just because it's, grimdark. There's no inherent value to grimdark any more than there is to the opposite. What would that be? Happy Bright? Neither has inherent value. Some of the worst movies ever constructed have been saccharine Happy Bright. Of course, the same is also true of those that are grimdark. There are some god-awful movies that are grimdark. There is no value to comedy over drama. There's no inherent value to one structure over the other. It doesn't exist. It's all about execution. And this movie, I'm not entirely sure you could have reasonably had it executed much better. Again, there's a few minor things that Mark and I talked about, but beyond that, it's an exceptional film. And I don't know if you never actually reached that conclusion, or if every one of your points is as inane as, well, just because it's X doesn't make it good. Well, no kidding. I'm not entirely sure there's a substantially more obvious statement that could be made other than, well, the sun rises in the east. I mean, really? And to whatever editor decided that should be your clickbait, no. Because you're dealing with an audience that is first of all and foremost only going to read that, then click, scroll down, and respond without actually reading the substantive points. Or it's going to cause them to just skip it altogether. That's just not good management, not good editing.
All right.
And to that person, look, I very rarely arrive at this conclusion. But if you're that bad at your job as a critic and a writer, you really ought to rethink your career trajectory, and whoever employs you ought to seriously rethink the amount of money they're spending on you on a regular basis.
Well, it's Time Magazine, and as we all know, magazines are dying. So, maybe they could save some money and fire her and use the money to, pay the rent. Well, at least one more month. That is the glorious conclusion to this segment and really to this podcast. It felt good to put on the old pants of Damn You Hollywood and get back in the saddle. Too bad after 2 more shows we're taking another hiatus. Next week we will be, and Damn You Hollywood is 9 o'clock every Tuesday, except when it isn't. Next Tuesday we've got Kong, Skull Island, which I'm sure will be fantastic. Oh, glorious,
I just want it to
glorious,
be the right kind of bad. That's all I want. That was
glorious
all. Let me be clear.
Clock.
That was all I wanted out of Independence Day Resurgence. I didn't get it. That's all I want. I don't expect a tour de force from any of the actors. I don't expect mind-blowing effects. I'm probably going to complain about the quality of the CGI in a couple of different points. I don't expect a great story. I want the right kind of bad, and then I want to watch Godzilla obliterate King Kong in their inevitable crossover.
Which I think is 2019 or 2020. In any case, so next Tuesday, 9 o'clock, Damn You Hollywood, Kong, Skull Island. Now, if you really like the Mark and Winfrey combination, if we are the dream team of your podcasting world, then the following week, the 21st and the 23rd, you're going to get a double dose of me and him. We've got Beauty and the Beastie on Tuesday, March 21st. And then on March 23rd, it's not Damn You Hollywood anymore. It's TV Party Tonight. And he and I will be reviewing Iron Fist, Netflix's latest and greatest from the Marvel group.
Very briefly. Mark, you're probably going to hate that show. It's mostly going to be a kung fu television series. And we all know you don't like martial arts movies.
Probably going to hate it because I'm already watching a movie about a rich guy who comes back from an island with superpowers. So,
Arrow is just not good.
Look, it's Arrow without the bow. Oh, look, it's Batman without the bow.
There's a lot of sameness. Also, very briefly in relation to that show, I'm starting to gear up for this particular rant very early. To all you numbnut morons complaining about the casting for Danny Rand, I'm not even going to give you the courtesy of assuming you're just lazy. You're just stupid. You have the totality of human intelligence at your fingertips, and you didn't bother to look up the history of that character before complaining about whitewashing.
Are there really people complaining that Iron Fist is white?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Please tell me these are not professional critics.
I have no idea. I know they exist.
Okay.
I know they've been vocal. I know there was controversy when he was announced. I know that the actor has been getting some crap on like Twitter. Let me be very clear. I'll say this now, and then I'll say it again when we talk about the series. Danny Rand as the Iron Fist was a character created back in 1974, mid-70s at a minimum. Okay, so early to mid-70s. That's how long this character has existed. He has always been white. He is a white guy obsessed with kung fu.
Whatever you Twitter heads thought that this should have been played by like an Asian guy, I'm not encouraging you to pick up a comic, but I am encouraging you to get your facts straight before you complain about something.
I'm encouraging you to go play in traffic.
All right, take it easy. Jesus. Let's save the rest of this rant for the actual review. So I got a couple of things I got to announce here. And then we are ending.
Just be aware, I'm gearing up for that one because how stupid can you be?
Quite stupid. Remember the Ghostbusters cultural conversation nearly sent me into a death spiral. But on the 28th of March, we end our March run of Damn You Hollywood with Power Rangers. Someone recently sent us a message about Ghost in the Shell. We're not covering it. I'm going away the weekend Ghost in the Shell comes out. And then I'm going away the following week. I'm going away for WrestleMania. And then, so I don't have time to go see Ghost in the Shell, and Robert didn't want to cover it anyway. And then
Robert was open to covering it, but I don't know. If anyone feels especially compelled.
Okay.
Again, I am open to it. I am vaguely familiar with the source material, and I find it generally interesting. It deals with a lot of very interesting subject matter.
Okay. Well, even though I'm not going to WrestleMania until that Sunday, I don't have time or the inclination. And then and then the night that we would have done the show anyway, I'm not going to be home. I'm going to be at SmackDown in Orlando. So that's our last Damn You Hollywood until April 18th when we do the Fate of the Furious. And then we're taking another 2-week hiatus. And then we're back for our Summer of Love, baby. The thing that started it all. Excuse me. The summer blockbuster season, nearly every Tuesday, the occasional Wednesday or Thursday, on the Rattle and Broadcasting Network. We're doing Guardians, King Arthur, Alien Covenant, Pirates of the Caribbean, baby. Wonder Woman, The Mummy, Cars 3, Transformers.
Wait, are we actually doing The Mummy? I thought we decided against putting me through that.
I decided nothing, sir. You will be put through it.
Crap.
Right through a table. I
would rather have Bubba Dudley powerbomb me through a table.
I'll keep that in mind.
We get to that movie, I will have many complaints.
Okay. Keep it in your pants, sir. Spider-Man Homecoming, the one Monday review, War for the Planet of the Apes because I'm going on a cruise. Then Robert is actually going to be doing Dunkirk the following week with someone else, and I will not be around. And then we come back August 1st.
For that one.
We come back August 1st for The Dark Tower, and then our summer wrap-up special is August 8th. And then we are done with Damn You Hollywood until we have 2 reviews in September. We have 3 out of 4 weeks in October, 3 out of 4 weeks in November, then Star Wars and Jumanji in December, and then we're done for the year. So that's the Damn You Hollywood schedule, more or less. Just in a couple of quick hits here, and I'll let you do your plug, and then we're done. This is Wolverine Week, as I said before, on the Rattle and Broadcasting Network. Yesterday on Source Material, we covered Old Man Logan. It was fantastic. For previous Friday, we did our Wolverine Week announcement and panel discussion of the character through the years. Tomorrow night on the Metal Hammer of Doom at 10:30, I think is what we agreed on finally. We are getting in the Wayback Machine. We'll be reviewing Entombed, Wolverine Blues, baby. And then finally, on Thursday at 9 o'clock, On Trial, X-Men Origins Wolverine. As I said, we've got Beauty and the Beast. We've got source material the day before that, doing Iron Fist, The Living Weapon. We'll be looking at volumes 1 and 2, Rage and Redemption, which I think is going to end up being a 2-part podcast. And then the Iron Fist television review on the 23rd. Another TV party just put on the calendar. We will be doing a Legion season finale podcast for a TV party tonight on the 30th. The finale is actually the 29th. We will cover it on Thursday the 30th. That's the current plan. And then lastly, just a real quick thing here. On Tuesday, the 4th of April, Robert has volunteered. Pat Mullen will be on. Hopefully we can get Gavin, maybe even the Casual Hero himself, Mr. Jed, back for a reunion. Casual Heroes reunion, WrestleMania weekend. I don't know if it's actually going to happen or not, but that's currently on the calendar.
Wait, did I volunteer for that?
Yeah, you did. Because I can't do it.
All that.
10 o'clock. Otherwise, you can do Ghost in the Shell. I don't care at this point. But that's currently what's on the calendar for that week, assuming it actually happens. And that's it. Our next full theme week will be the week of April 24th, and that's Rome week. We'll be looking at Pax Romana by Jonathan Hickman and source material, Roman Empire, Reign of Blood with Andrew Graham on TV Party tonight, Metal Hammer of Doom, Ex Dio, The Immortal Wars, and then finally, and we just changed this, because Pat Mullen's making me, we will review the Lizzie McGuire movie, because apparently that takes place in Rome. So there you go. All right, those are all my plugs. Those are all my plugs, baby. Hit it.
The only thing I have to plug, just two things. One, every Sunday, unless otherwise noted, at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on the Rad Legend Broadcasting Network, I host the 411 Ground and Pound radio show, a weekly show dedicated to the world of mixed martial arts. And I still need a W word for that deals with negativity, because I have the other two. I have my spiel for that, and it's all based on alliteration. It's the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts, and it's all those things, but I also need a W word that deals with the soul-crushing element, because every now and then it just gives you something you think you want. All I wanted was Tony Ferguson versus Khabib Nurmagomedov, and then nope.
And that may never be happening now.
It's too good a fight not to happen. It must happen.
Last I heard, he's being encouraged to go to welterweight, so he stops dying when he's trying to make the weight cut.
He is entirely too small for welterweight. Entirely.
Well, then it gets off to Bellator.
No, I think he'll get his weight cut under control, but
Maybe
there's
they'll
no
put
way.
it on. Maybe they'll put it on the July pay-per-view. All right, man, finish up.
Okay. Also, when there is a major MMA event, usually a UFC event, occasionally I get conned into covering Bellator, and I just want to die. I hate Bellator. I genuinely, this has nothing to do with their quality. I just hate them. You can find me covering those in the MMA zone of 411mania.com. This week I will have live coverage of UFC Fight Night 106. Vitor Belfort versus Kelvin Gastelum is your main event. The top 4 fights on that card are actually all very solid. It's a very well-constructed fight night. All right. I think that's it. So Mark and I will be back next week for Beauty and the Beast. Until then, please continue to be well, be safe, and behave. And as always, we don't make a lot of it, but we do it for the money.
Little Caesars has 5 hot and ready items at only $5 each. Choose from a large hot and ready classic, 8-piece Caesar wings, 4 20-ounce beverages, family-sized bacon cheddar loaded Crazy Bites, or new family-sized cinnamon loaded Crazy Bites. It's a deal so great, even my newborn is excited. What's that? She just said cinnamon loaded Crazy Bites? Her first words. $5 hot and ready deals only at Little Caesars. At participating locations plus tax.
Pizza, pizza.